Hello, I'm Jess. I'm a full member of the ICB, and today I'm here with two other professionals to talk about American bullies and behaviour and training. Um, so the other professionals I'm with are Colin Spence, who's a trainer and behaviourist and runs his own dog school. There he is, hello, in North London. And I'm also with Donna, who was my mentor for 5 years, and I still discuss cases with her now. And Donna's background is non-destruct rescue, and she deals with very severe behaviour cases. Donna trained at Battersea for was it 10 years, Donna?
Yeah, almost, yeah.
Yeah, almost 10 years. And also does a lot of ACE free work and is trained to quite a high degree in that. So today, the topic we're going to talk about is obviously American bullies and training and behavior management for professionals. Obviously, this chat is open for everyone to listen to, but we're going to assume a certain amount of knowledge in our explanations and conversation. So we're going to cover a few topics today. Topic one will be coping and learning thresholds. Topic two, biological needs and how lack of such being met affects behavior. And then gameness doesn't mean prey drive. And perhaps we'll fit in a couple of case studies as well. We're hoping to fit this all in. It's a very big topic today, so it might be multiple videos, but this is probably the first of a few. But I hope you enjoy it. So coping and learning thresholds for the American bully. So I think what I want to draw on today is what I have found in my experience. So my experience is I've also worked in non-destruct rescue for a long time, nearly a decade, taking in lots of different bull breeds. I then found myself with a foster dog in 2020 who fit more of the American bully type. For the sake of this session, when we describe the American bully type, we'll be referring to dogs that are kind of staffy, or American Stafford, particularly crossed with something bigger, Mastiff types, American Bulldog types, because obviously, as we know now, the American Bully is not being classed as a breed, but that's the vague background of the breeding. So those are the dogs that we're referring to. Now, in 2020, I found myself fostering one of potentially an American Bully type, and it was a completely different experience for me for nearly 100 staffy crosses that I'd had previously that I fostered and worked with. And I had this dog, and she was just a completely different thing. So, what I want to cover today is just why she's been so different, and also other dogs that I've worked with that fit the American Bully description, how they have differed in terms of what techniques I've had to use and how they've differed from other bull breeds. Okay, so I think as well, yeah, we'll start with coping and learning thresholds. So the American bullies obviously have slightly more guarding tendencies. They tend to, in a stressful state, veer towards more kind of people reactivity. I find they have less emotional resilience as well in comparison to staffies and pit bull types, who tend to be more emotionally resilient and very rarely, really, in my experience, showed aggression towards people. The American bully types, on a whole, I found generally can be a lot better with other dogs and kind of worse with people. So it's a couple of differences there. In terms of their coping and learning thresholds, they are much shorter than other breeds. And we're going to go into a bit of why that is. But in terms of whether they're coping with a stressful situation, they go from 0 to 100 a lot quicker. So they go into a high state of arousal much quicker. And that can really vary in what it looks like when compared to other dogs that I've worked with. And also, in terms of learning, they get into a high state of arousal quite quickly again, even from very short training sessions. So, does anyone want to chime in at this point?
The threshold, I do agree with you on that. I do find that across the board with a lot of good breeds. And thinking about it, there's a bull breed, an XL bully that I actually went to see, which I completely forgot, about 6 weeks ago, yeah, in northeast London. And this particular male had an issue with learning. He was always on the threshold, yeah. But because the owners were not aware of him always being over the threshold, yeah, he would find a lot of things very difficult. Just being out in public with lots of things going on, he'd be overwhelmed. So a lot of redirecting was going on, yeah, and jumping up, mouthing. And having seen lots of mouthings over the years, this mouthing was horrendous.
Yeah.
So I totally agree that they do have short threshold spans, learning spans, thinking spans, emotional spans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the issue is, I think sometimes what happens is you say you go to a professional and you're like, oh, I want you to take my bully breed out for a walk, and then they're offering these 2-hour walks in the country park, but actually 45 minutes is probably enough for a bully XL to do, because what you find in that window as you turn over that amount of time, actually then they start to do the grabbing, the ripping of things, because they can't cope with that length of time being around and being stimulated by different things. So it's kind of like stripping it back a little bit, and it's okay to not do as much with them. And I think society makes it hard for us to be able to say, do you know what, actually 45 minutes is enough, because in the grand scheme of things, even when you rehome a dog from certain places, like, this dog needs 3 hours exercise a day. No, it doesn't. You need to do stuff with your dog, but not for a whole 3 hours in one sitting, because then you're going to have problems. And also then you're going to start to build up this tank of a dog, and where it started out you was doing an hour, then you're doing an hour and a half, then you're doing 2 hours, because you're pushing it to get that same level of the adrenaline, the result kind of thing with them. And then they crash for about 10 minutes, and then they're hyper again because they can't relax, because you've not taught them to relax, because then they're like, oh no, we want to go back out again, but I don't really know how to cope out here. What are we going to do? Oh, hold on, let me go to this tree and I'm going to try and rip this tree apart to make me feel better. And it's about, it's okay to slow it down for them. It's okay to be like, do you know what? It's too much today. Let's go and do something quiet somewhere. Let's go home.
Or would you agree? They don't have to go out every single day anyway.
Exactly. There's a controversy there. You don't have to walk your dog every day, because we set it up for that routine, because that's what we think is okay. But and there's days, I always say to my clients, let's teach the dog, because there might be a day when you're sick and you can't get out, and your dog needs to be able to then relax in the home environment and be able to just breathe and settle. And they don't need to go out every single day. They need stuff from us every single day, but they don't need to go out every single day. Definitely.
I think that's a really interesting point. Sometimes, so I live in central London with my American bully type, and now she has a history of trauma, so her threshold for arousal is even shorter than you would have for a standard kind of American bully type that had been brought up in a lovely home and all the rest of it. Because as we know, when someone, a human, or us as social mammals, when we go through trauma, that shortens our threshold for arousal, that shortens our threshold for stress being the umbrella term. So not naming the underlying emotion of that, it could be anxiety, it could be excitement, it could be sexual arousal, whatever it is, but it shortens that threshold for the HPA axis to be initiated, and then cortisol is released. So we have 72 hours of cortisol if it's the needs aren't met to lower that. But in central London, it's quite often that I live in Harlesden in North West London, is very busy. Sometimes if I take my dog out, and I see this with clients, and I want to do a 20-minute walk or something like that around the block, I actually would have been better off doing something like free work in the garden, because she's trigger stacked on that walk and she's come back worse than she did before. In terms of American bullies, I just want to go into a bit of their breeding in terms of actually what they are bred for, and what we know of their breeding, because a lot of the history of bull breeds is quite ambiguous, and there's no, some breeds we can really trace back, and actually when you Google, what's the origin of a pit bull terrier, you'll get these bizarre articles from, they were in the Roman times and they were, there, but the reality is what we can trace them back to is bull baiting is when they started to originate. So they crossed an English bulldog with an English terrier. Okay, which are two breeds which actually now I believe don't really exist, or have slightly morphed into the British Bulldog and different breeds. So for argument's sake, that information is fairly solid, although we could still probably label it as colloquial. That's the origin of the Pit Bull Terrier and the Staffordshire Bull Terrier in short. Originally bred for bull baiting, that became illegal, so they started dog fighting. And what they were trying to create is a dog that had the strength and bullheadedness, let's say, of a bulldog, and then the tenacity of the terrier and the gameness of the terrier, in order to create this sport. But I think lots of ethologists talk about the breeding of kind of bull terriers and pit bulls as well, they were bred for fighting, and that's what that was their working cause or whatever. And they talk about the fact that they were bred to, so a lot of communications and stuff, like natural body language was bred out of them, so that in the pits they couldn't give off signals that easily, and the ones with less signals, communication signals and warning signals, actually became kind of the more the higher rated fighters, whatnot. There's a side of that history that people don't really talk about and don't really know in terms of the pit bull and the staff, and that's that quite often these dogs were kept in the house with children, with other animals, and kept as family pets. And I'm talking about kind of in the Victorian times, the 1800s. And often as well, if they showed aggression towards people, they were shot in the head. They weren't bred from, because they had to be able to be wrangled in the ring and handled in a ring while the fight was going on with breaksticks or whatever. So they didn't want dogs that were turning on their owners. The other thing is, quite often after fights, when dogs were injured, and this is coming from sort of memoirs of dog men, okay, which are not lovely to read, but this is the information that you pick up from these, is quite often dogs were, after a fight, the kind of champion fighters were shoved in a pram with the children in their household and wheeled back home. So as I said, there was two sides of them that potentially, that side is not really spoken about. And my experience dealing with pit bull, I shouldn't say pit bulls, not pit bulls, but Staffy crosses that we got in rescue, and Staffordshire Bull Terriers, is actually, I think, probably had close to 100 for them, and 2 of them showed reactivity towards people, out of dogs that I brought home. And I often also found it much easier than other breeds to slip them in with other dogs, even if they had a history of dog aggression, because they're very close with their family unit, and that's actually part of how they were bred to be. Now, when they started to breed the American Stafford in the States, they brought in bits of Mastiff and bits of American Bulldog, which gave this, I found a really nice description of American Stafford the other day, gave the American Stafford a stance which was slightly more stoic and less silly, kind of, and slightly less gameness in some ways than the pit bull and the Staffy. Now, when we look at the American Bully, part of their breeding is the American Stafford, okay, and also Mastiff types. And supposedly these dogs were supposed to be bred to reduce the amount of gameness in the Staffordshire Bull Terrier and have Pit Bull Terrier, and create a kind of calmer bull breed, okay, that would be more malleable for families. But actually what they created was a dog with a very short threshold for stress, that is crossed with a guarding breed. So you have this kind of slow dog with actually no history, no history of working, right? They weren't used as police dogs. They weren't used as dogs that need heavy-handed obedience training, bits of guarding. American Bulldog has some history as well of doing a bit of farm work, but I think less is more. What I'm trying to get to is less is more with this breed. That's what I have found, and I think we're all on the same page about that. And what's being misconstrued is potentially that they need lots of obedience training, and I'm seeing this from a lot of professionals. But actually, what we're here today to talk about is slowing them down. So free work, short training sessions with offered engagement. Those are the things that we need to see, not teaching lots of cues, and also recognizing that their learning capacity is not built for lots of obedience training. They have no history of that. They have no history of working. So in terms of, what we would need as working today, in fact, what they were bred for was to get very stressed very quickly and want to fight. That's what they were bred for. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are bred to be angry and to have a short threshold for rage or that underlying emotion, but essentially just to get very stressed very quickly. So what we want to do, if we think of it from a behaviorist perspective, is actually, what do we do with a stressed dog or a dog that has a short threshold for stress? We want to slow it down. We need to implement scent work.
And I think one other thing is, like, when you look at the numbers of true aggressive dogs,
yeah,
a true aggressive dog, they're so low, and they're the dogs that we can't bring down.
Yeah.
And and out of all the dogs that we've probably seen, even in our rescue background that come in, you can still count on one hand true aggression.
Yeah.
Yes, don't get me wrong, we get the dogs in that are, like we say, over the threshold, and potentially we need to safeguard them dogs because of they have the potential to bite or the potential to grab us.
Yeah.
So we need to work to slow them down, as we're saying. But the ones that are wired wrong, they're small numbers. They're not large numbers, and I think that's what's going on at the moment, where everyone's talking about this as though these dogs are, like you say, bred for aggression, and they're going to go out and they're going to nail everyone. They're not going to do that.
No. It's
not doing that.
interesting, actually, just drawing on that, is like with Piglet, my American Bully type, which Donna originally, actually, when she came into the council pound, Donna assessed her. She had a really bad grabbing problem when she came to me, first of all. And I'd like to say as well, she did have chronic gut inflammation. I found out a year later she had 2 slip discs, skin issues, all the rest of it. So very short threshold for arousal, and she went straight into this grabbing behavior. And she'd lock on, her thing was fabric. So if you were wearing a floaty t-shirt, she'd have your stomach, she'd lock your arm, whatever it was. But if she made contact with my skin, she would jump back. It was never her aim, although it looked aggressive. It was never her aim to create harm. It was just like a compulsive behavior and meeting a need. And we'll come back to that in a second. I wonder if Colin is bursting to add anything.
No, you explained that really, really well. I don't think in a month of Sunday I could have explained it in that way.
Thank you.
So well done there. The more I think you're talking about XL bullies, which you are definitely an expert in, arousal, a lack of understanding of how to exercise, whether that be physically or mentally. And for me, the mental side of exercise, the mental exercise is huge. Yeah, because even when a dog is not being physically exercised, the mental exercise doesn't need to stop. Yeah, and depending on the individual dog, we will give that dog the right type of enrichment or the right amount of enrichment regularly, so that we're not overloading, because we can also give too much enrichment. Yeah, it's finding that balance. Yeah, but equally important, finding, when I say enrichment here without going to elaborate too much, it's finding the right type of enrichment that is going to get the dog aroused in the right way.
Yeah.
That's the important bit. Not overly aroused, but aroused in the right way, to be concentrating and focusing upon the activity in front of them. Yeah. This comes down to educating, because we've got a lot of work to do as trainers, behaviourists, even though I'm going to throw groomers in there because they give advice, because people don't truly understand the breed. And I'm going to call them the breed because we've already determined XL Bullies. So for me, they're a breed in their own right. Yeah. If we're going to keep calling them XL Bullies, we need to really get to know them a lot better.
Yeah.
We need to treat them with the respect they deserve, like we would do for other dogs. Yeah. Equally important, the people out there that have XL Bullies, they need to be reached out to and be educated on them a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that most of them are not educated. I'm sure there are a lot of like the reputable, responsible dog owners across the board of all breeds. But somewhere along the line, there's always going to be a lot of people that are not understanding really what they've got.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on that, something that again, poor Donna has had this in the ear for 2 years. People, so when this breed became popular, around, it was before 2020, I think it was from about 2017, I started to see them a bit more, but they started to flood into rescue in lockdown. And something I was seeing a lot from behaviorists and not from behaviorists, from rescues and from people homing them online privately and from owners, is that people with Staffy and Staffy cross experience would suit these dogs. And if you had Staffy experience, I saw that a lot on a lot of write-ups for these dogs from rescues. Previous Staffy experience needed. These dogs are nothing like Staffies. They're very close to American Bulldogs in temperament, which need slightly less. They don't like their space invaded by new people. They have a guarding tendency. If I compare my previous Staffy cross to Piglet, okay, I remember a man coming to my window once, and I just moved in somewhere and he was looking for someone that owed him money who lived in the place before. Lulu, bless her heart, Staffy Cross, army crawled to the back of the room and hid behind the beds. Whereas Piglet, as soon as I got her, or as soon as her arousal level spiked due to pain or her gut is off or anything like that, goes straight into a guarding tendency. So those are just two things it's really important to think out about. And also just going back to the enrichment part, what I'd like to mention, and maybe we can do this, I'll do this in a bit more structured way about training methods and things, but in terms of enrichment, scent work is brilliant for American Bullies. But my dog will still get highly aroused, and bear in mind she's got trauma as well, so that threshold for arousal is so short. But a lot of these dogs, unfortunately, because of the culture, have already had aversive training, so a lot of them are going to be traumatized. So I think it's important I bring that point up, which perhaps we'll do on a second video we were talking about. But in terms of, for instance, even with scent work, if I do too much guided scent work, too much find it, that still is too much for her. Anything human led actually still fills her bucket. So what I try and get her to do towards the end of the walk is I definitely try and do more autonomous walks. And the way I structure my sessions or my dog walks is what I call a thing called the sensory circle. I also work as a special needs teacher with human children, and this is a concept we use with them. And the way that is structured is free play madness, running around to start with. Yeah. And really like exuberant. So for a dog, that could look like play with another dog. It could look like only, I'd say, 3 chucks of a ball, because we don't do ball games, and that's a whole different topic, which I'll come into. But some kind of, or running around playing, what I do with my dog is I'll chuck the ball into long grass, and then I'll run and we'll do a bit of dancing, and we'll run around like mad, and we'll mimic that dog play, because unfortunately she's too much for a lot of dogs to play with. Then we'll bring it into a structured thing. So we'll do a bit of training, might practice a few cues in the park, or we'll do guided scent work like Find It. Yeah. And then I will end my walk on my sessions with these types of dogs on free autonomous sniffing and working on that, and allowing them to just decompress that way. and she comes back quite pooped. Equally, some walks, I won't take any food out with me, and she will just do slow sniffing for the whole walk. And when I say a whole walk for my dog, she gets half an hour to an hour per day. Yeah. That's what she gets. And it's not loads and loads of effort. It's not loads of training. When I do bits of training with her, it's 1 minute at a time. And then coming down, generally, you know, that's pretty much. And any different, my brain's in my school brain, human-led activities need to be short for these dogs, because they're not really bred for it. They're bred to be our companions. They're bred to live alongside us. And you know, emotionally, they can be a lot more intuitive and stuff, I find, than any other breed, which is why I love them. However, whatever bull breed you're talking about, short sessions are important. But I find specifically for these American bullies, even because I think there's less terrier in there as well, they're just, whatever they're breeding, you know, to do whatever's happening with their breeding, I'm finding short, you know, specifically very short training sessions are needed.
And sometimes that with my clients, what the first thing that we do is we learn how to just pause,
and
relax. And I think one thing that's really important for these dogs is that they have the choice, and we allow them to make the choice and the correct choice. So they're thinking for themselves. And that's like where you come into like your lead work and stuff like that. I'm not going to tug the lead. I'm not pulling their body out of shape. I'm going to wait, because I have all the time in the world when I'm training. It doesn't matter if we run over, because we're waiting for the right moment for that movement. And all the while, everyone is safe in a setting. I'm not gonna interrupt that. I'm gonna let them take it in, let them breathe, and then we're gonna move on to the next thing. And I think it's like you see these people that are just storming through everything, like you say, and they're out there throwing the ball, 20 balls, and then their dog's like, I can't cope because I don't have my ball. Where's my ball? And then they come to you and they're like, oh, I can't walk my dog down the road without it trying to getting overstimulated. No, because you've done too much over this side. And actually, now I'm going to say something really crazy to you, which is we're going to slow it down. And you're going to come out for 10 minutes and you're going to just go to the end of the road and you're going to come back again for the next 3 weeks. And they go, what? No. And then I'm like, no, if you do this, you are going to see change, and you're going to see change in a positive way. So we're going to strip it back and then we're going to start again. And I think sometimes as human beings, they're like, I want to see you do a sit and a spin and all of this. I'm like, whoa, you got the wrong trainer, and that's wrong for your dog as well, because actually your dog can't cope with that. And it's trying to teach people that we don't need these long training sessions to make a difference and make a change. And actually, if we just chip away little bits of these jigsaw puzzles and we put all their pieces back in for them, they're going to be the best dog ever, and you're going to have the best relationship. And you're going to have the best relationship because they're going to trust you to say to them, it's okay, we're just going to do this for a little amount of time, because I know you can't cope with any longer, and I'm not pushing you. And if it takes a year for us to get to the goal, it takes a year to get to the goal, but we'll get to that goal.
That's less is more, and slowing, as we all are saying, slowing down. And I think as well, what we need to think about, and I think we've all realized with our background. So by the way, guys, I'm a behaviorist. I'm not a trainer. I didn't say that at the beginning. These two are trainers and behaviorists. And I look at things a lot from kind of, the biological perspective as well. But in terms of what we need to be doing is, it's less is more. It's shortening sessions, and it's autonomy. It's also a lot of processing time. What Donna's talking about here is a lot of processing time, and that's really important. I like to use I've started using a bit of latte for Piglet, and it's been a complete game changer. And the videos that you see from her training, from Leslie Devitt's training, I think are quite intense, and those sessions would not work for this, especially for this kind of dog. However, and maybe it's something that I'll take a video of. However, when my dog fixates on something, Normally I would just say nothing and, wait for her to look around or look away, and then I'd reward that, right? But now what I've started to do is go, oh my gosh, look at that. Yeah, I actually do this thing. And she goes, I know. She turns around to me, she goes, I know. Wow. And I reward her, and then we can actually move away. And that's made a huge bit of difference. So I do really recommend that, but in a soft way, not setting it up for sessions of lap. So I wouldn't work on it constantly, but it's something to throw into walks.
And I think that's the thing, is like putting it into the natural day to day. So
Yeah.
you're not going out and doing one specific thing. You just take bits
Yeah.
from all these wonderful behaviorists and
Yeah.
trainers and stuff like that, and we put them together for that particular dog. And not all dogs are going to be able to do one method, but we can take little parts of other people's stuff and just fit it in for them to be able to help them to grow. It's like, I have a dog and she doesn't particularly like joggers, and now if I see a jogger, I'm like, it's okay, it's just a jogger, and she goes, oh, okay, thanks. It's like that cue word, jogger, and she's like, okay.
Yeah, so
before she wanted to eat them, like,
yeah, she has a bit of prior warning.
Yeah, but now she's like, okay, you've told me, I can now, do you know what I'm going to do if I don't feel comfortable? And sometimes she's comfortable in that setting and she'll stay in that setting, but if she's not comfortable, she switches to the opposite side, and she's got time to do that, and she's like, I'm just going to come over here, and you know what I'm doing, because we've learned that together, and we've learned that within we're in tune with one another. So she'll be like, oh yeah, you said there was a jogger coming. Yep, there's a jogger. That one's going to be fast for me. I'm going to come over here, and then we're going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, that's really good.
It's really interesting listening to both of you, especially that first bit you were talking about, Jessica, when you were mentioning what I call arousal up and arousal down. Yeah, very important. Yeah, that when dogs are allowed to go to a place where they are overly aroused, excitable, that they're also able to be able to process and come back downstairs, and still feel less comfortable, Whereas the lack of us professionals getting it out there, that if we keep up the regime of taking them out and getting them highly aroused on a regular and daily basis, it becomes a very big struggle for that individual to learn how to be stressed, how to calm down, how to de-arouse themselves. And it's not easy. It's not always easy. And again, breed comes into play, because some breeds are hardier and sturdier and tougher, and the XL bully comes into that category. But yeah.
Just making a note. No, I'm just thinking about what you said there, Colin, because that's such a valid point, and that's a big issue with all this kind of what I'm seeing on social media. And again, this will be a separate talk, because it's such a huge subject, but not what I'm seeing just on social media. But I think 90% of these dogs, these American bullies, are attached to the balance trainers and aversive training methods and blah, blah, blah. And then we've got positive trainers who are trying to chip in, who's probably dealing with 10% of these dogs. And they're just doing too much with them. So that's a big issue. I think as well, in terms of what I was talking about with the sensory circle, Piglet came to me in a state where she could not regulate at all. She came very shut down at the beginning because she was in pain. She had a pyometra. She chewed off half her tail in kennels. And actually, she had quite low energy levels. After her tail was removed about a week or so later, and the pyometra was taken care of, she was neutered and went through all of that. When she came back and she healed, her arousal levels were really, really high because she suddenly had more energy. To a point, she also had chronic gut inflammation and all sorts of things going on. But it was a point where she couldn't take food on walks. So we had to do all of our engagement stuff through toys. And anytime a toy was in sight in the house, she would throw it across the room. She would start grabbing. She just could not regulate at all. And in that instance, I couldn't use my sensory circle. Yeah, I just want to make that clear. So I think we need to. I'm seeing a lot of things as well. And this is why I think general advice can be really tricky for dog carers and caregivers. There's some great advice going on that bully training club and all the rest of it. But if you've got a dog that's in a chronic state of arousal, and people are saying you need to be able to work with your dog in arousal, which is what I keep hearing. You need to be able to work with your dog in a state of high arousal. But a lot of these caregivers have these dogs. A lot of American Bullies that I see are in a chronic state of high arousal, in which case, actually, what we need to be working on is not getting them into as high, in my opinion, not getting them into a high state of arousal at all, because that's not teaching them emotional regulation. What we want to be doing is, like Donna's saying, is slowing it down, adding in choice, adding in processing, and adding in really autonomous sniffing. I do find, just in terms of bringing these American Bullies down, just as like set kind of procedures, starting with something mouth-led first, needs to take place before the sniffing. A lot of these dogs, when they're in a really high state of arousal, they're so fixated and they're so body up, intense. They're not getting their nose down if you chuck rotisserie chicken at them. That's not going to happen. So they need to dissect. They need to rip something up, or they need to get on a licky mat first and then move over to sniffing. American Bullies specifically, more than other breeds that I've found and I've worked with, even more than, because I find this with working stock labs as well, are so mouth orientated. And obviously, when I say mouth orientated, we know all dogs regulate stress through chewing, and that's a way to help them emotionally regulate, and using their mouth. American Bully types, breeds, whatever we want to call them, I find do that so much more. And that's where we're seeing a lot of this frantic grabbing behavior, which is being misconstrued as aggression. It looks very aggressive, and there's lots of jumping up and grabbing onto things, grabbing onto fabric, locking onto arms, but essentially that is their high arousal behavior. Generally, that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And where we have the Mastiff crossed with the kind of Bull Terrier, American Stafford type thing going on, what I'm seeing is a kind of plod along, plop, 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 to suddenly like an alligator, which I think is like, what, this is the big trouble with these dogs. And they're breeding, they're quite slow. I'd say they're slow processors. They're not really the brightest sparks in the block, a lot of them. And I don't mean that in a horrible way. They're lovely. And I always say my dog is very emotionally intelligent, but she doesn't pick up things as quickly as, say, the pointer that I walk most days, which is cool. That's their breeding. But I think it's also worth thinking about, I think, as a priority with all dogs and with the children I work with as well, is emotional regulation really needs to come as a priority. And I'd say that even more importantly for these American Bullies, because they're not emotionally regulating in a lot of these homes, because they've been sold as family pets. And that's, if you look at American Bully website, it will say family pets, good with children, all the rest of it. Not to say they can't be good with children, but when you've got children running around and climbing all over them, they're not going to be as emotionally resilient as a Staffy, and a lot of these people have previously had Staffies or Staffy crosses, and been able to be heavy-handed in training, have been able to have their kids climb all over them. And these dogs can't cope with it because they've got kind of more guarding breeds in them, and they've got breeds which are have created a less emotionally resilient dog. But anyway, in terms of short training sessions, and so if we are training any cues, lots of offered engagement, lots of slow sniffing. I think in terms of processing as well and talking about choice is really important, rewarding the right choices, remembering that engagement as well, if we're rewarding the right choices, we've got to think about that's also training, that's also something they can only cope with in short snippets. So not doing giving a balance on walks and on training sessions, particularly if they have undergone trauma, to do those in short snippets, and then able to allow them to do slow autonomous sniffing as well is really important, and breaking that up. Also mirroring. Mirroring, I think, is not talked about that much, but we're social mammals, dogs are social mammals. And what I found is really lovely with Piglet is mirroring has been a big tool that I've used in terms of, because you don't get any self-regulation without co-regulation. And essentially the issues a lot of these dogs are having is struggles with self-regulation. Moving alongside her, places that she's going when, things like that, and then processing things at the same time. And I think that's what's lovely about the latte or lat. There's an element of mirroring there, because she's like, look at that, wow, but you can't get involved. But I go, yeah, look at that. And it creates so much more of a bond as well. I'm going to talk about ball games quickly, and then we'll probably start wrapping up a little bit. But does anyone else have anything to add on those points that I've
I was
ran?
just going to just say one thing really quickly, and I think it's really important to just talk to your dog as you go through the process. So no matter what you're doing, even if you're like, right, we're just going to walk past this person now, and then we're going to go down here. So like a chitty chat. I always like to chitty chat to them, because I feel like even though they probably don't understand a word I'm saying, it's that tone in your voice. And because I think that eases you
Yes.
down
Yeah.
to a lower level, that your dog is then down at the lower level, because they're just like, okay, yep, my owner's good, or my trainer's good, because they're calm and they're not worried by the fact like there's a motorbike going to come past, because we got this. And I'm like, oh look, there's a motorbike coming down the road, it's okay because we got this, kind of thing. And let's just move slightly over here, and then like, okay, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And I just think it's really important just to tell them what we're doing.
Yeah.
You would tell a child what you're doing. You're not going to go out and be like, let's walk down the road and just be completely quiet.
Yeah.
You're not doing that with a kid or another human being. You're going to talk to that person as you go along. So why do we think it's strange that we would tell our dog what we're doing and where we're going? Oh, we're just going to go to the road. I'm going to stop here. Let's just wait a second. Okay, there's no cars. Just little things. And I find, since I've been doing that more, that the dogs are a lot more relaxed, definitely.
Yeah, I find that as well.
Totally agree with you. It's something I say on a daily and regular basis to a lot of clients, regardless of breed. If when we are outdoor exercising our dogs and there is no communication between you ever, yeah, what dogs start to learn is they become more influenced by what the environment has to offer them. Yeah. And the environment's either going to offer a bad experience that we could miss, or good experiences that we could have actually interacted with as well. But a lot of owners, we need to sort of like really get that message across. Communication is key. Communication is so important, because our dogs start to get to understand you better. Whether they understand a word or not, they can feel you. Yeah, they can sense you. Yeah, and the more we're communicating when they're out, each time they have to be influenced by the environment, because they're being influenced by you.
Yeah. And just in terms of we need to be able to self-regulate, and sometimes as a behaviorist you actually have to teach the owner to self-regulate, and that's part of our job, and they will co-regulate with us and then learn self-regulation. And sometimes it's about fake it till you make it for the owner, I think, or the caregiver. So I love that, about talking, because once you talk yourself, or you put on a smile, actually, there's a
and what I say to people is, even if it's not about the dog training, even if you just started to have a conversation about something that you're really interested in, that brings the levels down for that dog still. So it could be that you're renovating your house and you just talk your dog through renovating your house journey. But your levels have come down, because you're like, oh yeah, when I get back I'm going to paint the wall. It's like, oh yeah, that's great, thanks. Oh, hold on, what we do, because you're not going out going, I'm walking my dog, oh my god, I'm scared, what could happen.
Sometimes if I do have those anxious days, or I did with my last dog, I just make jokes. I joke my way through out loud, looking like a mad person probably. But I just wanted to talk about, so what we're describing there is building a safe relationship with your dog. And recently I did a muzzle training live thing. I'd never done one before, and I made a point. I mean, the whole thing was very disorganized, and I think it was more of a comedy sketch, but I did make a point of like things like when I was moving Piglet's bowl, explaining that actually, because it was for caregivers, covering that, that's safe for me to do because we've built a safe relationship through X, Y, and Z. But for you need to be swapping things in. And I think it is as intricate as that when we're talking about one thing, you know, whether we're doing just muzzle training, you know, we do need to drop in other things to safeguard and risk assess around these dogs, especially when we're giving out, you know, generalized information, which a lot of behaviorists and trainers are doing at the moment. With building a safe relationship with my dog, I think there's a common misconception from trainers and behaviorists and ethologists as well, who aren't that familiar with actually having a bull breed. A Staffordshire Bull Terrier or an American Bully, whatever you want to talk about, you know, they're ready to fight kind of thing. When actually, I would argue it's not about, you know, gameness does not mean prey drive. All the bull breeds I've had have always lived with cats, even if they've, you know, Piglet's scared of cats, she doesn't love them. She lives with a cat. And I'm not fearful that she's one day going to turn around and kill my cat, because actually, when she has a trace drive, but she doesn't have, you know, even with her really high arousal, and even from the beginning, she had this crazy high arousal and wants to play with other dogs and all the rest of it, and could guard, but it's not in her breeding to go out and kill animals. It's not part of what she was bred for, and I think that gets misconstrued a lot. But and just to point out, in working in her emotional regulation, when other dogs have started fights with her, even if she goes rab back, she's never, I think she's about 5 times really, no, 3 times dogs have gone for her and she has gone back, but all she's done is rah, like that's it. And as soon as I say, you know, pig, stop or come, she comes to me, and she's able to emotionally regulate because she's not in that chronic state of high arousal. And I think where you get these serious incidents with bull breeds, who arguably I would trust more with small animals, with other dogs, with children, when you work on their emotional regulation, their general arousal levels, and you keep them low, yeah, you don't have a dog that's going to jump into a fight. With pit bulls and with staffies, they were bred to do the best at what their handler wanted them to do. And at those times it was fighting, but really their breeding just created a short threshold for stress. So I just wanted to say, you know, adding to that, a safe relationship is really important in terms of having a safe dog, arguably more than teaching a dog how to sit or even, you know, loose lead walk, which we need now. Yeah, we do need that very importantly, especially at this time, for people to be responsible dog owners and to also look like responsible dog owners. But the most important thing is that emotional regulation and keeping arousal levels low. I think a lot of bull breed specialists talk about, you know, they need to tug on this, they need to tug on. I don't play tug with my dog ever. Yeah, it's not a game we play. She's already mouth orientated. She meets that through a snuffle ball that I put food in. She rips the things out, or cardboard boxes that she rips up. We do not play tug. I do not teach tug. I don't teach them. I don't encourage that. I encourage them to meet their mouth needs in other ways. What I was getting to with as well with the safe relationship is just the majority of time that dogs have gone for Piglet because she lacks sort of social skills. She has not gone back. She's come to me because she knows that I am her safe place. She will return to me when that has happened, and she will make the choice to do that. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that in. Lastly, I just wanted to finish up. I think we'll have to call it a day, so I know we've got stuff to get on with, but I just wanted to talk a bit about ball games. Previously, when I did my undergrad, I went back to school at 26, did my undergrad in biological sciences. I created a dissertation around, it was actually it was supposed to be ball games in comparison to scent work and the biological effects. Because of COVID, the labs closed down. I had to then manipulate some previously existing data and change it slightly. So I had the pit bull compared with 4 other breeds. What I found, long story short, was when 20 minutes of ball games were compared with absolutely no exercise. This is in Spain, a study of 400 dogs. All 4 other breeds, their cortisol levels went down with 20 minutes of ball games in compared to no exercise. Okay, the pit bulls went up, and essentially what I found in the study was that pit bulls in general had higher cortisol levels in lots of, just generally speaking, and that's really what they've been bred for. And I think when we break it down like that, it's very clear for behaviorists what they need, because actually we just need to bring down those levels, which is why I'd argue not to do lots of sports games with them or things like that, and get them more into scent work and things. But I just wanted to draw on that. I use a ball with Piglet because a ball is her favourite thing, and she's allowed to carry that. And we've manipulated the game of fetch so she's not fixated on it like that. the structure that I will use it is I'll throw it once or maybe twice into some long grass or somewhere where she has to sniff it out. I'll then, you know, when she has it, we'll chase each other and we'll run round. Then she will carry it for a minute and then she will drop it and she will sniff and she'll move away, and then I put it away. When I put it away to stop her from jumping up and grabbing, because that can also, what's happening for a long time doesn't really happen anymore. I'd teach a drop, Shirak Patel's drop, was implemented there, or drop some chicken until she started to eat it. And then I'd pair also, once I had it in my hand, with dropping chicken down. So she was making a safe relationship there and I wasn't just taking it off her, because a lot of that grabbing also comes from having things ripped off them, as we know. I think we've covered some great stuff. We didn't quite get onto biological needs, but essentially, if biological needs are not met, you won't see a bull breed curling up, because they're bred to have a visually high threshold for pain. So what you will see is hyperactive behaviors, quite simply. You won't see them. My dog has had issues with her tail. She has lower back issues. She has 2 slip discs in the middle of her spine. She will run and run and run and run if she's allowed to. She will chase that bull. She will run with that dog for an hour. She will go mad. You would not think she is a dog that has any musculoskeletal issues, because that is her breeding. However, what you do see is hyperarousal. Okay, hyperarousal and pain. When you get hyperarousal in the American Bully, you get grabbing, you get jumping up. Same with gut issues as well. Very generalized, but that is what we are seeing most frequently, I think, when dealing with these dogs. And that needs to be targeted. When I see grabbing, I do a little bit of conditioning, sure, to safeguard, and we swap in. So for me, I swapped in cardboard boxes because, you know, everyone needs their recycling ripped up. So it seemed practical, meets that dog's need, but also I go for biological needs first. Gut, skin and gut go together, and also joint pain. You know, have them on some free work, put them on a pain trial, and that's it. So anyone have anything to add on quickly, and then we will say goodbye for now. No, done. All right, great.